You're listening to the 40 Thrive Podcast, the show created for women 40 and beyond, ready to shake things up. And now, your host, Jackie McDougall.
Welcome back to another episode of the 40 Thrive Podcast. If you are here listening for the very first time, welcome. You picked the perfect day to hit play on this podcast. Today is the very first day of 40 Thrive's 10 days of giveaways. Over the next 10 days, I will be featuring some incredible products and services created by women-owned and operated businesses. Also, there are some special prizes provided by friends of mine that will help you thrive in so many different ways. But here's the thing. You must be in the free and private 40 Thrive Facebook group to win. Don't know how to join that? Just check out the show notes to join us over there. Now, I'm not going to share all of the products and services quite yet, but today we are starting with a really cool gift that I personally wish I could win. Day one, we're giving away an amazing convertible bag by Sose Leone. I got to say that again. It's so cool. Sose Leone. This is the only everyday bag you'll ever need. It is slick. It is convertible. It is a backpack or a shoulder bag or a crossbody bag. It's timeless, sustainable, long-lasting, and it is absolutely beautiful, made of eco-friendly materials. One of the things I love is it will actually fit your laptop and other daily essentials with ease and style. And the sleek design makes it easy to match with professional, casual, active outfits, so you can basically wear it for multiple occasions throughout the entire day and night. This bag retails for $129, but one lucky 40 Thriver is taking this home for free. I really wish it were me, but I'm excited to give it away. So head on over to the group and enter under the day one giveaway post. Plus, you will see in that post that Sose Leone is also giving an exclusive discount for those of you who want multiple bags or to give away one as a gift. So check out that post in the 40 Thrive Facebook group. I absolutely love finding brands and business owners who are doing really great work and trying to serve the needs of women everywhere. So please go check out the bag and enter to win. Okay, let's get to today's guest. Amy Smith is a certified confidence coach, masterful speaker, and a personal empowerment expert. She is the founder of thejoyjunkie.com, where Amy uses her roles as coach, writer, podcaster, and speaker to move individuals to a place of radical personal empowerment and self-love. Amy is just as passionate as I am in helping people find their voice, and she is highly sought after for her uncommon style of irreverence, wisdom, and humor. I'm giving you a heads up right here that the conversation does get a bit colorful. So if you've got small kids around or you're in the office, now's the time to throw in those earbuds. Got them in? Awesome. Here's my conversation with Amy Smith. Amy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to connect.
I'm excited too. So you caught my eye first and foremost with your free e-workbook. So yes, we're promoting your workbook right off the bat, but because it's called Stand Up For Yourself Without Being a Dick, you might be my spirit animal. Tell me why you came up with this.
Yeah, so I realized that one of the most prevailing themes around speaking up for yourself or standing up for yourself was incredibly dichotomous. It was you either are incredibly combative, adversarial, and, really kind of being a bitch to get your way, or you're the antithesis, you're the doormat, everyone walks all over you, you're the people pleaser, you're this. And it wasn't until I had sort of some of my own epiphanies in my relationship with my mom. There's actually a way to give voice to things, to ask an adult child to move out of the house, to have a conversation about divorce, about all of these really polarizing conversations that we embark on that we think it's either I make them happy or I just bulldoze through. And I realized wow, there's this really unique place that none of us are ever taught to employ, which is to be assertive, yes, but then to pair that with kindness and grace, which is one of the major cornerstones of the work that I do. So I wanted people to know, like, yes, you can give voice to things, but be really kind and compassionate about it at the same time. You don't have to be militant.
You and I have a common theme of helping women find their voice.
Yes.
That is my jam and your jam. So tell me, how does one, in your opinion, stand up for themselves, but keeping that kindness and compassion? Because you see a lot of women like, sorry, would you do me a favor? Do you mind doing, and it's like, no, stop.
Yes.
Like, ask clearly and effectively, but how do you do that without sounding pushy?
So the short answer is it's all communication. It's truly about your paraverbal and nonverbal skills. It's about inflection and rhythm and cadence of voice. Most of it is how we're saying it. And that the same is very, very true when you are asking for a boundary to be upheld or having a really, gnarly conversation. I think one of the things that we cannot skip over is that disproportionately women are taught through society, through different families of origin, that's our kind of lot in life. And I hate this idea of the masculine versus the feminine, like, oh, you have to be really masculine in order to get ahead in work, And I'm like, what if we just had soft and strong, and sometimes soft was being called for and sometimes strong was being called for, and we didn't have to pigeonhole it to a gender or anything like that. But I think first of all, it's being compassionate with yourself, that we're kind of set up to have either that demure, let's just go with the flow, or what we're seeing now largely in our political landscape is, oh, you're this raging feminist and, all of that nonsense, where it's now becoming more uncouth to be that way. So I think, first of all, understanding that we're not set up for success. And then second of all, understanding that a lot of it has to do with our self-worth and our own understanding of, does my voice matter? And so I think we can teach semantics, we can teach specific phrases, we can teach like a step-by-step order of establishing boundaries. But what it really comes down to is, do you believe that your voice matters? Because that piece is so, so huge. And I think you can work either way. You can start by practicing speaking up, and that will start to influence how you view yourself. But I think more commonly, it's more advantageous to start looking at this idea of your own intrinsic self-worth and that your voice really does matter. And I think that's complicated for every person, because sometimes it's rooted in survival. Almost always it's rooted in survival. That
Right.
We grew up in a family where, it was easier to get by being quiet, or to make everybody else happy, or to overachieve. I think it's also recognizing that some of those tactics that you've employed in the past were in service of keeping you safe for a long time. And now it's about, okay, and there's a cost to that now. And I need to figure out, how can I start using some different tools to flex that voice?
Right. You completely hit the nail on the head, because we can teach, and you see this, you're in the online space.
Yep.
Follow my 7 steps to confidence. Do this, do this. You could do all the things, and at the end of the day, you feel like crap, and you don't feel confident, and you feel worse than you did when you woke up. The fact is, you can follow the steps. I do subscribe often to the fake it till you make it in my own life, because sometimes, the action then will bring on, the feeling that you want. That being said, I think it's really important, and you're doing really important work in talking to women about what it is that they believe about themselves.
Yes.
There's such powerful messaging that we have all believed our entire lives, and never mind the fact that a lot of it is mixed messaging.
Yes.
Be confident, but not too confident. Be, stand up for yourself, but not so much. Like,
not like that.
Don't be extra. Don't be loud. Like, there's so many mixed messages that we want our girls and our women to be successful and to be confident. But as long as they're not making anyone else feel anything that's negative.
Right. Which is totally a fallacy, because we cannot control anybody else's emotions. And I think that's one of the biggest obstacles for women, is that we go, I don't want to make them feel something. And you can't. You actually can't do that. Like, calm down. You're not that powerful.
Yeah.
You know, but I think really having that agency. And so one of the governing truths that I use in my work all the time is this concept of you are responsible for your intention, not your reception. Because so often we go, okay, this conversation with my partner will be successful as long as he sees it my way, or
Mm.
as long as she understands where I'm coming from. Or we think this conversation with my in-laws or my children will be successful as long as they abide by what I'm saying. It renders you powerless if you are
Yes.
so invested in the reception. About 4 years ago, around the time of the election, I did this podcast specifically around this whole concept of we're all going into holiday dinners and things like that. And how are you going to deal if everyone sitting around the table is a different political affiliation? And, how are we going to navigate some of this really? And it was quite contentious, if you all recall. And so the whole message behind the podcast was really what I talk about all the time about being kind and graceful with whatever you're sharing, but then to also not allow your silence to make you a liar, to not roll over on things that you find divisive or offensive. So I felt really powerful about the episode. I felt like it was nonpartisan. I thought anyone could benefit from it. And the reception, however, was all across the board. So there were people who said, thank God, I had no idea how I was going to deal with my fucking family over the holiday. Thank you so much. This was really helpful. Other people, indifferent, apathetic, weren't following it, whatever, missed that episode. And then others still said, like, I can't believe you would put out this show and you've lost a listener and it's been the last 8 years of hell for me and blah, blah. And I was like, did you listen to the episode though? And then found out that they didn't. But then again, an opportunity to walk my talk and just said like, well, I truly wish you well. It really was about us coming together and being able to connect and speak our truth regardless of differing views and, kind of wish them well. So I took a step back and I went, okay, here I am in a situation where my reception is all across the board. And all of those things I can't control. What I can control is my intention, who I am being, if I am proud of what I've said or done. And so I kind of went back and I listened to the episode and I said, I would never do anything differently. And so then it became, all right, not my circus, not my monkeys. I don't have to carry that. Right.
Right.
That I think is one of the problems and I personally feel like it comes down to emotional intelligence, that we have such a difficult time being in uncomfortable emotion that we usually fight or flee. We either become combative or we become the doormat. And so when somebody doesn't like something that you've said or a stance that you've taken or a decision that you've made in your family, we have such a tough time being with that uncomfortable emotion that we go, how can I pave it over and make them happy again? I think one of the biggest things that we can do is sit in our own discomfort of when somebody's not happy with you. And
Right.
instead of the immediate go-to of I need to make them like me or I need to smooth this over, to really take stock of, wait a minute, have I done anything wrong according to me? Not according to them, because they might say, yes, you have, but you have to check in as your own barometer and go, wait a minute, am I proud of the woman that I was? Am I proud of how I spoke up? Am I proud of my delivery? And sometimes it takes a lot of internal reflection to analyze that.
Let's dive a little bit deeper into communication. What would you say is the most important thing my listeners should know about how to approach some of those tough topics?
We know from communication studies and, how adults function that nobody creates change. No one creates change unless they feel understood, unless they feel heard. So even taking that into our interpersonal relationships, like your children are not going to do jack shit unless they feel understood or,
Right.
take that with a grain of salt because I obviously don't have children.
No, but you're spot on. I mean, they are just humans. I think sometimes people look at parenting and children in a way like they aren't these humans with just less experience. So you're absolutely right. When a child, they feel seen and heard, whether it's by their parents or by their teachers. I mean, I have 3 kids and I see the difference in their efforts when they're working with a teacher who they feel appreciates them. I mean, that's just human nature. You're absolutely right.
Yes, absolutely. So, but I'm not saying for 1 second it's easy, because when your partner, when your colleague, when your subordinate, whenever they do something that you find totally irresponsible or frustrating, our natural instinct as humans is to fight or flee or
Yep.
possibly freeze. So we either want to take them to school or we want to sweep it on their table. I don't want to look at it. Right. So acknowledging that, okay, my partner just did something that makes me want to tear all his teeth out. How do I not do that? So I think, again, it comes down to emotional intelligence, like knowing you are fully allowed to be pissed off. Like there's no problem with that at all. However, communicating from your pissed offedness rarely yields the result that you're looking for. So it's taking the time to purge that energy and then broaching a conversation that could actually be productive when you've cooled down, when you're not in the throes of that emotional current.
100%. So
Yeah.
I do have some questions from my
Sure.
community for you. But before we get to that, I have to know though, like, take me back to little Amy, because did you just come out of the womb like ready to be a life coach with all this like sage knowledge? Or were you basically a train wreck like the rest of us, and then you decided I had to do something with my life?
The latter.
That's usually the answer.
Although I will say my best friend always says you came out of the womb evolved, which I think is such a sweet sentiment. So I'll give you a little rundown on what that looked like. My background, I grew up in a very conservative, born again Christian family that was incredibly dogmatic, a very militant. And now in my adult life, as I've studied more spirituality and things, I do feel like it was quite cult-like and lots of motivation from guilt and fear. And I was eccentric and bisexual and loved all things vanity, which was a total sin, right? I loved makeup and, all the proverbial girly things, even though I don't really like that term. And so I then met my soulmate, my husband, when I was 18 and got married, fell in, did that whole thing, moved out. And I kind of lived this, a double life is incredibly dramatic, but I was a different person with my family than I was separate from that. And so when we would go see my family, I would tell my husband, like, okay, no Jon Stewart, no South Park, don't cuss, don't drink, Howard Stern, like all, my bleeding heart liberal shit, like none of that. And I had to kind of prep him, like, let's put on the facade when we're here. And I think it all kind of came to a head in 2007. My father passed away, and he was a brilliant, beautiful human. And so the day of the service, because I had worked prior to doing what I do now, I was a makeup artist for 10 years. And I knew very clearly that I was going to do makeup for his viewing. And so that's right, folks. I did makeup on my dead dad for his service.
And I think that's actually quite a beautiful tribute.
It felt to me like an asshole move to be like, oh, dad, get your own makeup artist. I have this wealth of knowledge about doing makeup on a corpse. I should probably come to your aid. So I felt like without a shadow of a doubt, there was no way I was going to let anybody else touch him. So I felt extremely convicted. And I also felt like it was very much a shell. I felt like it was, the vehicle that had carried his spirit around this planet. And I also knew that I wanted to speak at the service. And he had an incredible life story. And although he was incredibly devoted to his faith, he was a lot more open and accepting in what I think a true Christian should have been, even though I don't subscribe to that. He was just, we could have great conversations about theism and deism and monotheism and all these amazing things. Whereas my mom was much more of just kind of a follower. Well, that person said this and that, so it was quite the sorrow, to say the very least. And so the day of the service, we get back home to my mom's house, and I'm kind of feeling like I'm winning Best Daughter of the Year that day. And she finds it the most opportune time to say, it just feels like we failed as parents because the three of you aren't walking with the Lord, myself and my two younger brothers. Right? Like, I'm a disappointment. Check yourself right now. So and a bit of context there too, I was by all accounts like the quote good kid. Both my younger brothers did jail time, had a lot of run-ins with the law, real tumultuous upbringing. I started working when I was 14, put myself through college, that whole
Yeah.
story.
So you were living the life, you just weren't necessarily subscribing to the structure of it.
The one right way. And that's one of the things that was so tough for me is that, and we've still had these conversations to this day, that there is only one right way to her. And she's like, you're right. That's how I believe. And I'm like, wow, that is so, it saddens me that you don't have more expansiveness, but I respect that, that's your choice.
Is that how you really responded to that? Or was this before you were a life coach and sort of evolved in this way? And did you just let it go?
No. So what I said at that time, well, this is, in '07. So it was starting to be, it was all about law of attraction. It was, Secret was coming out. And
Right.
so I thought I was going to manifest him to not die when he was in the hospital. And then my faith was shaken and I was like, wait, how do you work attraction? And I didn't know what was going on there for me. But so I had just started delving into that. And I had gone to coaching school in '05. I was still working in makeup artistry and I hadn't segued completely into the new profession. So the thing that I could muster, the only thing that I could say to her in that moment was, you probably shouldn't say that to a child. And she said, well, that's just how I feel. And I remember trying to give an explanation of like some sort of analogy, like imagine you feel the way you feel, but you grew up in a Jewish family who cannot understand why you want to be born again. Wouldn't you just, so I was trying to give her a parallel of like, wouldn't you want to stand in your own truth? That's where I am. And I remember just kind of telling her, here's what you need to know is that I'm not ignoring any conviction. I'm not ignoring anything that's calling to me. I am standing 100% in what I need to be. And it just very much fell on deaf ears. And I mean, it's also coming off probably one of the most egregious days of our life.
Right.
And so it was riddled with emotion, but I'll tell you what, that opened up a chasm. And right after that, I became incredibly combative. It was like the floodgates had opened and I was like, yeah, let's fucking talk about abortion and let's talk about gay rights. And by the way, I'm bi, and by the, and like, let me throw all the jabs, because I realized that I'd been carrying so much anger for how I was raised, the mask and the stifling and all of those things. And that was really what changed for me, realizing that you can be vocal and not be vitriolic. But that came after many years of having to apologize and go back to her and say, hey, and I think this is a really crucial thing that everyone needs to hear is I would go back to her and say, hey, I still feel really strongly about what we conversed about, but I should have not delivered it in that way. You did not deserve that. I should not have said it to you in that way. And for that, I'm apologizing.
Right.
Not I take back my views.
Right. What's really interesting, though, is that situation is super relatable. It doesn't have to be about religion or anything specifically. But when we as women over 40 behave in a way that we think will be received positively, or we will be welcomed, we will be accepted, and then that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And then we start to behave in a way that is actually more aligned with us. This is what I want to say. If you're going to behave in a way that you think everyone will be pleased by, and they're not pleased, why would you not just be yourself? Right. Because if they're not going to be happy, you're never going to please them anyway. You might as well be aligned with who you actually are in a respectful way and just live your truth, because ultimately it's not about the response. I've seen that. I've seen myself in the past behaving in certain ways that I think, oh, well, I'll be accepted by this person or this group of people or, whatever it is. And then I'm not. And it's so hurtful because I've bent over backwards and like I feel like a contortionist trying to be everything that I think you want me to be, and you're not happy. It could be a relationship. It could be a family. It could be a work, colleagues. But when you show up confident and aligned with who you are and what you stand for, it's amazing that you really don't even care anymore what the response is, because the only response that really matters is your own.
That's right. And you're absolutely right. And I think that there is a responsibility of the self-help community and the quote experts to say that that's not easy, that it's
Right.
not, it infuriates me sometimes seeing memes that are like, just love yourself, just be confident, and it's like, I'll get fucking right on that. Thank you.
Self-love is the best love, girlfriend.
When would we have been taught that? We've been taught how to be skinny, how to, be sexy, how to accomplish, how to get all these degrees, how to be rich. We've learned all of those things that are desirable. But when have we learned how to contend with fear, how to establish boundaries, how to be articulate in telling somebody, please, don't rub my pregnant belly? Like all of these things that we have opposition with that we just aren't taught. So I do feel really strongly that yes, you are absolutely 100% correct, but I just want everybody else to know that especially in my case, it was not a light switch. It wasn't just, oh yeah, I'm just going to be rooted in my own truth, or I'm just going to be confident. And then magically everything, I just don't give a shit what anybody else thinks.
Right.
It was a journey and a lot of grappling with beliefs that I held for a long time. And now I'm really fortunate to help teach people how to do that now. I really feel like we need to be teaching kids in schools. I just don't want to be the person to do it. But I feel like that's where it really starts, is childhood. And again, emotional intelligence, that we're allowed to feel what we feel.
You're absolutely right. The thing is, like, a little sidetrack here, but there was a school shooting at my son's school just a few weeks ago. And so this is me trying to talk about it without like breaking down. So my son was outside the school. He was walking toward the school. Someone on a bike told him to turn around and run. He looked, and all these kids were just like coming out of the school. It was a whole thing. But what the school is doing in response, they've created this wellness center. They've created bean bags and blankets and games in some of the classrooms. They are really in tune with ways that fear and anger and frustration can be manifested in a person. And so it's unbelievable. I cannot say enough about how the school is responding, bringing in experts and all that.
Yes.
What if we were able to sort of bring some of this into the schools before something so tragic happens? Really understanding that these teenagers are under tremendous pressure. There's depression, there's anxiety, there's so much going on that we sort of sweep under the rug until something like this happens. And so you make such a great point. So if somebody out there is ready to do the work and go into schools and create some of this emotional intelligence, like, do it. There's a need for it.
Yes. It's, I mean, we could very easily say it starts at home. I actually was having this conversation with my mom over Thanksgiving, and she was saying, where would we start? And I said, I really think it has to be schools, because we can't count on the parents. Right. I mean, there are I'm assuming that everyone listening to this is enlightened and just doing their absolute best.
They're amazing. They're the best.
But so many people, I mean, I grew up in an amazingly loving household, and I still have a shit ton of issues that I had to work through, and giving credence to children that you're allowed to feel what you feel, but you're also 100% responsible for how you express that. So here's healthy ways to deal with anger. Go beat the shit out of your bed. Or, my brothers had, back in the 80s, they had these wrestling buddies that were like pillows that looked like wrestlers, things like that, where we can release our wiggles or learn how to journal or learn how to color and music. And I remember I'm kind of obsessed with all things true crime. And I was watching a documentary on juvenile prison systems, and it just gutted me to hear a lot of the guards ridicule these young kids, sometimes 11, 12, who were bawling their eyes out about crimes they had committed or about the trajectory of their life, and the guards razzing them and being like, oh, you're being a fucking baby and you need to man up, and all of this ridiculous narrative that we hear. And I'm just like screaming, like, no, let him feel what he feels. Go in there and nurture that and create power from that. And so, yeah, I mean, I could get going on that, but I do think that would change the world.
But I think it's really important to, whoever it is that wants to do that work, but also, keep working with the adults and
Yes,
keep giving them the tools. Because I think if we come from both sides, then
absolutely.
maybe we will have many more people in the world who are able to work with their feelings and also feel them. We're constantly like shoving, like you were saying, Instagram memes down their throats where you're not supposed to feel bad at all. And
Right.
it's okay to feel, oh my gosh, I don't think I can do this, entrepreneurship another day. It's okay to feel like I'm sad over this, whatever's happening. Like we don't have to be inspirational quotes
No,
24/7. I think
no.
it's really important to empower women, especially to find someone. Maybe it's you, maybe it's my group, whoever it is, like
Yeah.
a neighbor, a friend, and just express those feelings. Don't live and wallow in those feelings forever, but have them.
Yes, that's right. I think of it a lot like food. So like we wouldn't get mad at our body for throwing up. That's really how we get with crying. The minute anybody cries, like you watch people who are being interviewed on television and they tear up, the first thing they say,
Sorry.
sorry. So in my group we have this, if because we're all on video and stuff, and so if anybody starts crying, if they say sorry as a gut instinct reaction that we all do, they have to follow it up with sorry, not sorry. And then they'll say like, I'm not going to apologize. I'm not going to apologize. I'm like, I'm witnessing your humanity. Like there's nothing to apologize for. But if you think about it, we're that same way with food that doesn't sit well with us. We go, I don't want to throw up. I don't want to throw up. I don't want to throw up. And what happens when we do? We feel so much better. We
Yeah.
move beyond it. We're able then to consume other things. And the same is true for purging of emotion. I think our fear is what that emotion was called in our youth. Many people have been told that that's weakness. And I know a lot of people who feel like if I start, I'll never stop. That's not actually how emotions work. So I think it's that intelligence and that education around, no, these are for you. Emotions are just messaging. That's it. They're to say like, hey, Jackie, pay attention. Something's going on here. Or, hey, Amy, that didn't feel right. What is that being told to us? But what do? We try not to feel them. So the minute we feel opposition from somebody, how can I make this smoothed over? Or can I drink this away? Can I numb this away in some way? So, we're bombarded with ideas to not be angry, to not feel things. And I think that's one of the bravest, most courageous things that we can do is start entertaining our emotions in a powerful way.
I love that 100%. So you were angry. So I think a lot of people can relate to. So now you're showing up and you're angry and you're starting to like process sort of everything that went on in your childhood. How do you move from that position where maybe you have to express every single opinion as it comes to you to now being this enlightened life coach?
Well, I would say that
Was there a fairy godmother involved of some sort?
yes, exactly. Well, first of all, I don't know if I would ever claim being an enlightened life coach, just because I also think that there's this fallacy that we arrive, and we don't. We never arrive. We grow substantially. We have epiphanies. We have amazing things that happen to us, but we are never done. And that's another thing that I think is really important in the personal development community, is to not say, here's this and all your problems will go away. It's
Yes.
here's this and now you can contend with life in a more powerful way. Period. It's a new way to manage life, not I've arrived.
That's such an amazing, like, such a great point, because there are people out there selling their products and services as like, be like me, become like me. I've manifested everything. So you fully admit, as we all should, you're a work in progress. And so
yeah.
you were angry then. And so now
Yes.
you've moved toward progress. So,
Right.
the other thing too is like, I don't think you have to be the end all be all perfect to be able to teach people to come along that same path.
No. And in fact, I find that the more vulnerable and candid I am about the things that I'm experiencing and how I choose to deal with them, that's the message. That's
Yes.
what is inspiring. Not that you're shitting glitter all damn day, but because that doesn't
Wouldn't that be
happen.
nice?
Like puffs of sparkle.
Although it would get all over the place. It would be a disaster.
Although I kind of feel like that's my ideal situation. Like I love glitter. So anyway, just this week on Monday, we had to put down our dog that we've had for 15 and a half years. And my husband and I have been together for 22. So she's been with us through so much. I was in the depths of despair. And Mondays are the day that I typically do an accountability for my group. So I go in and I do a video. And so I said to them, I said, here's what's happening with me. I wanted to rally. I wanted to show up for you. And I said, truth be told, I need a day. I need to be on my knees bawling today. And I need to also walk my talk and not try to work away my grief or drink away my grief, or I need to sink into it. And they were all incredibly receptive. And I think those are the teaching moments, not that life is never going to suck or you're never going to go through negative self-talk or fear again. It's that you will contend with those things differently. And that's what personal development's about. So I think, to kind of answer your question, to where I am now has been constant work and will continue to be work. At the entirety of my career as a coach, I have always had my own coach. That blows my mind when people don't have a mastermind group, don't have a therapist, don't have their own coach. To me, it's like going to a financial advisor who's bankrupt. It's like, no, I need you to have your shit together and be like on point.
Right.
So for me, it's still using my tools. It's still doing morning processes. It's, having allies. It's working on my own shit with my coach. And those are the things that I think are really, really incredibly important. And it is a little bit sobering, I think, for people to realize, oh shit, there's not an arrival point. But to me, what it is, it's a ratio flip. So instead of like feeling like shit 80% of your life, and then 20% you might have these little blips of happiness or fulfillment, you've flipped the ratio. So you're confident like 80% of the time, you're, loving life, you're proud of yourself, you love the person in the mirror. And then 20% of the time you have some self-doubt. Yeah. Or, you might have to bust open your journal, or you might have to cry your eyes out. But to me, that's a much more fulfilling and thriving way to live.
Absolutely. And it's more realistic.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if you look at some of the people out there doing, the biggest personal development people out there, it's not in the absence of, self-doubt and question marks. They just keep moving forward in the presence of self-doubt and question marks.
Yeah.
That's really the trick. Can we do some questions from my community?
Yes. Let's do it.
All right, cool. So this is one of my favorite questions ever because she asked 2 of them, but she's only going to listen to the answer to question number 2 if the answer to question number 1 is aligned with her.
Okay.
How do you feel about chocolate?
Oh my gosh. If I wasn't married to a human, I would be married to Ghirardelli's dark chocolate caramel. My husband and I have a joke that I literally cannot consume any type of chocolate without getting it on me in some way. Doesn't matter if it's a protein bar, chocolate milk, chocolate ice cream, I will get it on me. So hopefully she's in alignment with that. If not, I'm not attached to the reception, remember?
Exactly. And I'm with you, like dark chocolate all day, every day, because, there are some properties in it that's good, but it's just, I am past the point of like putting any chocolate that is not quality in my body. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't taste good. Like I'm a chocolate all day, every day, but only if it's really something that feels good.
Well, that's what it makes me laugh, because I listened to your episode with Rick about, the different things that are different after 40 and like how you, that is one of them, right? No more low quality chocolate. Like,
exactly.
I don't have time for that.
Yeah. So like when people are like digging through their kids' Halloween, I'm like, no, I'm good. Because I know that my husband put on the top shelf my chocolate.
Yes.
Every time he goes to the grocery store, he gets me one of those bars and I have a square or 2 each day.
Yes.
That's my thing.
Oh my God. Amen.
All right. So here's our second question.
Okay.
How do you know when the time is right to make a major life decision, like changing careers, moving to a new home or city? And what strategies do you suggest when making those decisions?
Ooh, okay. I think this is one of the toughest conundrums to come at, because I think we have what I like to call the cognitive override, where our gut is really telling us something. We're feeling a pull. And then our brain goes, yeah, but you make such good money here. Or, yeah, but that person really takes good care of you, even though you're not madly in love or the relationship is fizzled out. I think that there's a lot of things to take into account. So one of the things that I suggest doing is, if the fact that and I'm curious what you think, Jackie, the fact that she asked this question to me indicates that she already knows she needs to make a change.
Right.
You don't bring that up unless there's something being called for. However, I really do believe that you have to take care of how you operate. I'm incredibly stability oriented. I'm risk averse. I tend to like, the sure thing. So I know that I can't just put in my notice and hope it works out. I need a plan. Other people will never make a change unless they just go cold turkey and pull the rug out from under themselves.
That's me.
Okay. So you have to know how you operate in order
Yes.
to make that next step, right? So one of the things that I suggest doing is what I like to call a weighted pros and cons list, where you've got, okay, here's the pros and cons of staying in this job, or here's the pros and cons of moving into this new career, let's say. And you weigh each of those things that you put down from a scale of 1 being it's not that big of a deal to 5 being this is a fucking huge ass deal. I'm going to have significantly more time, significantly more money, or whatever it is, the things that matter the most to you. And then you tally it based off of those numbers so that it's much more about how important are these things, not necessarily just the quantity on either side of the list.
Yes.
That's one thing that I think could be really helpful for her. But is that your instinct with her, that she probably already has a pull?
Absolutely a pull. I do think, so I only know from my experience, but like sometimes I'll get that pull and then I'll shake things up and I realized I was just bored. And so I have recognized that in myself. I have ADHD tendencies. And so I want to make sure that I'm mixing things up in my life in a way that feels good, that I'm really kind of scratching that itch so I don't blow up other areas thinking that's really what I want.
That is a brilliant point. I did a podcast recently about shiny object syndrome and just this idea of I'm bored. And what I think what you're pointing to here is there's something else awry. So to this listener, it could be focusing on a career change is so much sexier and more alluring than dealing with my marriage that's falling apart. Or, so it could be that it's a distraction, but that's where you have to really dig deep. And sometimes it's both. It's that I'm not happy in my job and I'm not happy in my marriage. So it's like both things need attention, but you don't know that unless you really look deep and, like, to your point, say, what's really going on behind here? What am I really craving? I'm actually craving adventure. Do I really need to change everything, or do I just need to go on a sabbatical? Or do I maybe just need to start an art project? So what is that you're really, really craving or hungry for? What is that element that's missing? And then start looking at, is the career the actual thing that needs to be the vehicle, or can it be through another medium?
Exactly. Something that's not as disruptive. I mean, listen, if you're ready for a career change, I'm all about it. I've listened to you. I know you're all about it.
Yes.
But I love really digging deep and understanding the intrinsic motivating factor behind it. And then if it is a marriage thing over the job thing, like, work on the marriage thing.
Right.
Do that, get that solid, and then turn to the career thing, because it's only going to help you anyway if the marriage is stronger when you make that leap.
That's right. And also, I will say, if it feels radically more complicated than that, get support. Like, hire a coach, get involved with a group, get a therapist. If you're,
that's always the answer.
If you're
always
saying like, but Jackie, but I can't because my husband this, or, but Amy, no, I can't, because then you need support.
Yep. 100%. Always, whether it's hired or a girlfriend or a mother or a sister, whatever it is, absolutely have that place that you can turn. Make sure that you have that place that you can turn, that you're going to get honest answers and not just somebody, stroking your hair and telling you it's going to be okay.
That's right. That my best friend always says, if I want to be comforted and to somebody just agree with me, I don't call you.
Exactly. I'm
Because
exactly the same. I will call it out.
yeah,
Actually, one of my clients rephrased it because she said, "You call me out." And I said, and I felt kind of bad. Then she rephrased it and she said, "Actually, you call me forward." And I
yes.
was like, that works for me. Okay. We have time for one more question. How do we regain our confidence after a series of shattering losses? How do we remember who we are, that we have a lot to offer, even at a time when it seems everyone is literally looking right past us?
Ooh,
I see this a lot in my life, like whether I'm coaching creatively or in this group, that we hit a place where we feel invisible over
yeah,
40, over 50, maybe in our 60s. And that's a very real place because
yeah.
there are outside factors, people around us who stop seeing us as maybe how they saw us once before. I'm curious what your thoughts are on how to regain that confidence.
Well, my first immediate thought was a series of losses calls for grief. And I if anyone is not familiar with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross' perspective on death and dying or on grief and grieving, I would highly advocate taking a look at that, because I think we really do vote on when grief is warranted. And so we'll say, like, my kid's moving out of the house, that I shouldn't be this upset. I should be excited. Or I moved jobs, or I moved across the country. And why am I so despondent or upset about this? Instead of going, ooh, what's here for me? So I think the one piece here is you have got to address whatever the emotions are that are happening. And then I think we also get to a point where we're sick of wallowing. Like, it's not about a purging of emotion. Like, I'm dealing with, I'm just expelling this anger, or I'm expelling this sadness, but now I have become depressed or I've become angry. And that calls for a totally different type of support. So I think that depending on what the loss is, I look at usually the facts of the situation, like what happened. Did I go through a divorce? Did I lose a family member? Did I lose a financial investment? And what am I making that mean? Because oftentimes we take the circumstance of the situation and we make some sort of meaning into it that is totally untethered, doesn't have to even be a parallel. So, for example, if I go through a divorce, that must mean I'm unlovable.
Hmm.
We take this scenario, the circumstance that
Yeah.
sucks, and we make it a statement about who we are in the grand scheme of our life. Or if I lost this job, that means I'm not intelligent, I'm not competent, I'm not relevant. Are those emotions understandable? Of course, but they don't have to be your truth unless you adopt them as truth. That's why I think that the work of personal development is so incredibly important, because you can kind of go, oh, wow, I see what I just made up. I just made up that I have no relevance anymore. Ask Ruth Bader Ginsburg about that. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, the
Yeah.
person who started McDonald's didn't do it until he was 50. Like, we all have these notions about who we are in society. And then once we've experienced the circumstance, then we've made it mean something. Now we have a story. And now we'll start gathering evidence to support that story. So let's say, for example, you go through a divorce. That's the circumstance. You make that mean that you're not lovable, that you're damaged. Who is going to want to, you don't want to start over. Who's going to want to be with you at this age? Blah, blah, blah. No efficiency, whatever. Now you've got a story. And now you're going to start supporting that story. So that
Hmm.
means you see all these online dating sites for people who are young, but you don't see any for that are applicable to you, or you see all the ways you can't work with technology. So you talk shit to yourself about it. When you keep doing that narrative inside your brain, you keep reinforcing it. It's neural pathways. It's part of how the brain's wired. So I can't say that there's necessarily one easy answer, but there are steps that you can take to start changing that story. But the first step, I think, is to look at what are those tragedies or those circumstances that have happened, And then what's the conclusion that you've created? And then start looking at sources, coaches, books to help you specifically change that story. Because it's one of those things that I wish we could wrap up in 5 minutes, but it's not. It's something that really does call for attention.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much. And here's the other thing. When you're 30 years old, I've never seen a person who's 30 years old and then look back at when they were 10 and be like, why aren't I like I was when I was 10? Because there's a very, very different life, very different experience, very different needs. But yet when we hit 50, we look at our life when we were 30, maybe we're in a certain career, doing certain things, and we're like, why aren't I the same as when I were 30? I think it's a mistake. I think it's a problem that we really have to look at who we are right now in this moment and what we have to offer. And whether the more visible or the more I believe that we feel, well, we see ourselves and hear ourselves and value ourselves, the outside world mirrors that.
Absolutely.
And so I believe if you think you are invisible and that no one sees you, turn that inward, because I believe that's an internal thing. I'm not saying there's not age discrimination, all that. Like, this is not that. But I think if we start with where we are and what we believe our value is right now and work on that, the outside will come.
And all of that is, I mean, it's a very simple perspective. Like when you think about the glass being half full or half empty, it's the same fucking glass. It's the same glass. It is just a perspective. So if you want to notice all of the instances of injustice and all of the ways that you're invisible, you are going to find all of them.
Yes.
Then I would say, set yourself up for success. Be around powerful women. Subscribe to powerful podcasts. Get involved in groups or community events that are around women doing amazing, powerful things at a different age. Get involved in like fuck your beauty standards sort of trends and things like that, where we look at models who have vitiligo or who are Downs or who are gender nonconforming. Like there are ways to see relevance in places that we haven't had that before. Right. But I think it's about getting out there and actually finding it and taking agency over, no, I am going to find these places of support because they do exist. They do exist.
And it all goes back to that mentorship, support, all of it. I know I'm here for my listeners and my community. I know you're here for anyone who wants to go over. I will link to all the ways that they can connect with you in the show notes. I just truly appreciate your time and your expertise.
Oh my gosh. I've had a blast.
Awesome. Thanks, Amy.
All right. Bye, Jackie.
Take care. I love talking with Amy and hearing her unique take on being bold and badass. And I cannot thank you enough for tuning in today and every single time you press play on the 40 Thrive podcast. I am fully aware of all the things you could be doing right now with your time, and the fact that you choose to spend some of it with me is absolutely not lost on me. Thank you so very much for listening. If you like this episode or any of the 40 Thrive podcast episodes, please share it with a friend. The more women over 40 we can reach and help to thrive in their own lives, the more I can continue providing this free resource, connecting you with experts, brands, and badass women over 40. And if you have not hit that subscribe button, now would be the perfect time to do so. In 2020, we are stepping things up a notch with some incredible bonus content and episodes that will be sure to take your life to the next level. But if you're not subscribed, you won't know about them. So do it now. Until next time, take care and keep thriving. Spring has sprung, and with the change of seasons, sometimes comes an increase in vitality. If you're feeling in the mood for a little more personal time, may I suggest Coconut. Coconut is all about providing clean and natural ingredients when you're enjoying your most intimate moments, with or without a partner. Naturally safe products developed by people who are obsessed with quality. Get 15% off with promo code GROWNASS at grownasswoman.guide/coconut. That's 15% off with promo code GROWNASS at grownasswoman.guide/coconut.